And welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. I'm Aaron. With me, as always, is Dave and Fredo. How's it going, guys?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Your wife wanted to take pictures for the social media, and I looked at myself on our screen. I'm like, no, the bags in my eyes are really pronounced, and so I guess I'm looking tired, but yeah, feeling pretty okay. Tonight we have we're going to do a little watch episode, and Dave recommended that we watch episode 7, The Force Awakens. And so if you want to watch it and we're just going to talk about it, just do our own little dork commentary over the top of it. So if you want to join us, are you all on Disney Plus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So or Dave, are you like on a DVD
I'm on a long time ago. That's
okay.
where I'm at.
No, I mean, what platform are you watching this on?
I'm on Blu-ray.
Okay, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any playback differences. So anyway, if you're just start on a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, get your copy booted up, and then come back to this point in the podcast, and we'll just go on the count of 3. We'll hit play. So 1, 2, 3, play. And go ahead, Fredo.
I was gonna just to start off. Is how big of a miss is it not to have the 20th Century Fox fanfare?
It's funny. It's a generational thing because I've listened to podcasts that are, guys younger than us, and they didn't mind, and for me, it's part of the nostalgia, the fanfare and everything. But at the end of the day, it didn't make me, storm out of the theater.
Right.
I remember that people were talking about after the Fox merger that they can put the 20th Century Fox back in at the beginning of the new movies. And I was like, well, I guess, yeah.
All right. I'm going to say something right off the bat.
All right.
I was so very confused by the Resistance. What it was, why it was. I'm still, sometimes it's still like explaining, trigonometry to a 89-year-old. It was just kind of a goofy concept. It's like, so is this like the terrorist organization of the New Republic, or is this how we're supposed to get on their side? You know what I mean? It's
This is summer reading.
Now, I guess okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it's the New Republic is basically we don't have no guns, and then the First Order comes around. And it's like, oh crud, we need guns, but we can't have any guns. So it's like we'll just funnel money over here to these people, or just these people just rise up or whatever. It's just it was just a goofy concept. But anyway,
I think I wanted to establish the idea of, and it's weird because if you do the summer reading, you recognize why it is that such a thing as the Resistance exists. But just the concept of that, wait a minute, there's a New Republic, but they're not the ones dealing with the First Order. So matter of fact, the New Republic has no interest. They think it's a minor issue, not a big deal. And except for Princess Leia and the few people who believe her, it's all,
So
do you know why they did it?
Mm-hmm.
The reason they did that is so you have the underdog thing.
Yeah.
It's like that's exactly why. And if you do the summer reading in Bloodline, in particular, you'll get some of the backstory for how this organization sprang up.
First of all, I'm going to tell everybody listening to this, you're not going to hear me say too many bad things about this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it is. I think it looks great. It's fun. It felt, and yes, looked like Star Wars. Maybe, people will argue that it looked a little bit too much like Star Wars, but you've heard me on this podcast many times say why this needed to look that way, and maybe I'll say it again later. But there are things in here that are just like way cool. Like you never think about, like the stormtroopers in the Troop Lander when they cut and you see them standing there and they're rocking from side to side. Because that's what you would do. But in days of yore, they'd probably be all just standing there perfectly still. it seems like there's a little there. I don't know. There's just a level of detail that goes into this that is just way cool.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree with all of that. This is the reason that JJ got hired for this gig, is because he's a very visual storyteller in that sense, in the same way that George Lucas was. And it's like, well, let's show you rather than tell you, because it's a more effective way of doing
Yeah.
the story. And you're going to get that again, that beat later when we see Ray introduced. It's like
Mm-hmm.
very much show me instead of tell me.
Right, it's not sad, and I also love the little moment
That
right
bothers
there
me.
between.
That bothers me. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. BB-8 being okay, so this is one of the couple things that bothers me about this movie. BB-8 being hauled into the X-wing. There's something that comes down, grabs him on the dome, and he gets pulled up, and then they cut to the top of the X-wing, and he's coming up from the bottom, and that thing is not pulling on his head. They should have just done the Jawa sand crawler, suck him up through the tube, and he's up in there. Yeah, Fredo, quit rolling your eyes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of all the things to kind of get bugged about. I'm sure if you look at one of the cross section books, they'll have a pretty handy explanation that the
But what
hooker
I'm
upper
but what
whatever
I'm
is
saying though is in
rolls away.
1977, George Lucas, they're like, we need to get him in the sand crawler. Well, it's just a vacuum. It just and why not? But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Now, I was gonna say, and one of the things that I really appreciate about it, I mean, look, you got Max von Sydow in this movie, may he rest in peace, and he's the
Brewmeister
first
Smith.
Ming the dang merciless, please.
No, Brewmeister Smith.
Yeah. Anyway, he and he does a lot with his little role here of establishing both who Kylo really is, but also kind of start giving the ball rolling when he meets with Poe, and that's one of the things that Star Wars always has had is little moments where small characters seem to have a much bigger presence in the universe. Now, so I was glad for that.
I think this is also the first time we see blood in Star Wars.
Hmm. Well, no, no. When Obi-Wan slashes what's
Yeah.
his name's arm,
Oh, good point. Yeah, I
there's
stand
the arm
corrected.
with a little bit of blood.
Okay. I will say another thing, like another bugaboo I have is I didn't like the sound of Poe's laser blasts, but that didn't sound too Star Wars to me. But oh well. Again, minor little things. I thought this was a great entrance of Kylo Ren setting up the villain. I mean, they show him to be. It's kind of interesting because in A New Hope, it's like we see Darth Vader and we're led to believe, oh, that guy must be bad. But here, the first thing that Kylo Ren does is, kill an old dude in cold
And
blood.
monologue, yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, we've established that he's fairly evil.
Hmm. And then I think part of the thing that kind of you remember back when before this movie came out, all the theories about who Kylo Ren really was, and it's surprising that none of that really even factors into the storyline. Ultimately, they're very straightforward about okay, he's somebody, the identity's a secret, but it's important, and of course, some of that is, and there goes Max von Sydow. No, it's the idea that he's important, that there's a family, that there's a backstory to him. It's all the mystery box stuff that Abrams loves. But it pays off in this movie.
And stopping a laser bolt with the Force was badass.
Yeah, that's an example that we've gone around on, which is like you can show different facets of the Force, and it's like we didn't always have like 100% understanding from day one, right? It's like you introduce these different abilities that these characters have, and it's okay. It's nothing to freak out over. Like, and this is a perfect example. It's like, wow, he can do that. We haven't seen that before, but that's pretty freaking nifty.
Mm-hmm. But also, it's also going to be interesting to look through the movie. Uh, Kylo Ren starts off much in the same way as Darth Vader in terms of menacing, powerful, dangerous, but he will lose a lot of that luster as the movie goes along. Like he'll be shown up to see, and that's kind of the difference between him and the granddad that he's trying to emulate is that Granddad had, his rep was earned, and he kind of knew what it was.
Yeah, but Vader was kind of bossed around by Tarkin and everybody else, so he was not top dog in A New Hope,
Mm,
you know,
no.
in certain aspects. Um,
I think as children, we didn't really understand those dynamics. It was just kind of like, oh gosh, this guy's still like big and scary and awful.
Mm,
And I don't know, maybe Kylo in that sense holds up for little kids. But I agree with you, Fredo. Like he ends up getting shown up in this movie, and
mhm.
I think that's a big part of his character arc.
and there goes BB-8 into the
So
sand
okay, so
dunes.
what do you guys think of BB-8 before the movie and once you got into the movie? Because when I first saw BB-8, like in the trailer, I was like, really? That it was kind of off-putting, but he's probably one of my favorite droids in the entire saga now. I love BB-8. I mean, and I think that's because just of the character development in that droid.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't think anything bad about him. I didn't think, oh my gosh, he's too cute or too whatever. No, he was totally fun, and he only grew in size and quality as the trilogy progressed.
I thought that was a fine bit of acting by Oscar Isaac there, like staring in awe around the hangar, like that really sort of crystallizes that the resistance is not well funded and not well armed, and oh gosh, we're really in for it right
Yeah,
now, aren't we?
Phasma, probably biggest miss of the entire sequel trilogy. That could have
Hmm.
been, I don't know. I don't know if it's kind of like Boba Fett. We made Phasma out to be more than what it was going to be, and then ends up not being much, and then we're all mad. Or if it was never supposed to be that big of a character, who will ever know?
At this point, I think it's unfortunate because you've seen her the opportunity to have more, but
Mm-hmm.
they clearly didn't want to go that way, and maybe they just felt like, okay, we wanted to have a cool secondary character, and sometimes that's as far as it goes with the way they're thinking it, but you know, it's surprising that they didn't take the opportunity, but I do love that moment with Finn when he gets back to the ship and he's still processing all those emotions. The fact that he didn't shoot with everybody else, him all sweaty and, unsure. And then, of course, here comes Phasma and, immediately, okay, you got to go back to being a stormtrooper.
So whether or not we're seeing Ray, whether or not it was supposed to be this way with Ray being a Palpatine, I do find it interesting that their themes share a common rhythm
Mm-hmm.
where Palpatine's bum 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 and Ray's bum 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 bum. There's a little bit of alteration, but it shares a rhythm DNA, so that's kind of interesting. But that may have just been wow, lucked out there. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think they planned this far out that she was Palpy's granddaughter. You
This
know,
is an awesome shot, though. We saw it from the trailer. The crashed
X-wing.
Star Destroyer and the
Mm-hmm.
buried X-wing.
His bird pecking away at a metal thing. I remember watching that and I loved it because like
Here's here's
you're
one of
not
the
gonna
here's
get
one of the
much.
great unanswered questions. Why did she park so far away from like where she's
Maybe
taking
that
the
was the
junk?
parking area. I don't know.
That's a parking lot. Now, quick question: you guys did
It's
the
like
summer
parking at
reading.
Disney World or something. Get the last spot, so first one out.
You guys did the summer reading before the books before this movie.
I did not.
Was
Did not.
okay.
No.
Okay, never mind. That might be something to ask in Wikipedia. Is Jakku also an entirely sand planet like Tatooine, or is the region where she's living sand because of the aftermath of the battle?
I'm pretty sure the canon on that is it's another sand planet that
Okay.
Can
its
only have one
environment.
biome per planet.
Well, its environment was affected by the war, as I understand it.
Hmm.
It wasn't always a desert planet, and
Okay.
so it's taken the war harder than anyone else. But that, I'd be way off base with that. But I do want to say something here. We talked about how the storytelling here is so smart because you get these quiet moments. The characters get a chance to breathe. You get introduced to her in an intelligent way that you don't have to just tell us everything. She just shows us, and we know everything we need to know. Just from these scenes. But I also think that there's something important in the fact that she's introduced alone. The other characters are all kind of introduced in a big muddled mess together.
Yeah.
And I think like that's an important thing, not only just because like, well, she's the most important character, but I also think it says something about her character. It's like she's a very solitary individual, and we're going to re-emphasize that even more. So this is all just really smart. Sorry.
And I love this little moment where she just finishes her food and puts on the X-Wing pilot helmet, and you can see that her little shelters in the down AT-AT remains. She's literally a child growing up.
Fredo. It's an AT-AT. Sorry, move on. Keep going.
Oh, you didn't see Rick? No. I'm about to show you a clip from Rick and Morty later on about it discusses that. But yeah, that she's literally a child of the rebellion of the Civil War. She's growing up in the crumbling aftermath of it all. So there's a symbolism there to who she is, even before we get to know anything about her.
There's also things that we pick up on. I mean, I don't know if it dawned on us while watching, in the theater for the first time, but immediately she speaks multiple languages. She speaks droid. I think that's something that we need to, I think that obviously that's an intentional trait that they put in her. We need to pay attention in future Star Wars, endeavors of, it speaks to, I don't know if necessarily Force abilities, but it speaks to a specialness. It's kind of like Omega right now in the Bad Batch. She's very intuitive. She believes she speaks droid, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm. But then also, like I'm thinking, like somebody like Han when he meets Chewie, that he speaks Wookiee.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's the idea that it speaks to an inquisitiveness, a desire to know more, that they're not just simply happy with their lot in life. A lot of the thing that ties a lot of our heroes, throughout the various Star Wars movies is wanderlust, a yearning for more than what's been set for them.
But she's also, the solitary figure, and she has to figure out the solutions to her desires, in her own way. She's kind of on her own with the Force, when that comes up later. Mm-hmm. She's kind of mano a mano with Ben eventually. It's just like she's kind of having to figure her way through this on her own. And maybe in more of a, I guess in a stronger way than any of the other characters that we've seen to this point. Right.
By the way, quick question. Here we got the torture scene with Kylo and Poe. Was this the first time that they put any kind of audio sound to the Force?
No. In A New Hope, when Vader is choking Admiral Mahdi in the conference room, you get a rumble.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you get a big rumble. Now, the thing that I think is kind of cool here is that, this is the first time, though, I think we see, using the Force to read somebody's mind. And what's cool is that since then, we've seen that Darth Maul has used it I believe, in the Clone Wars. So they're taking some of these Force abilities that we see, and they're starting to apply it, I guess, in retrograde, if you will, just kind of neat,
Right.
And this is Simon Pegg as Unkar Plutt.
And it's going to come up later that we're going to see, there was a scene that he was supposed, his demise gets cut out. And do you think he should have stayed in?
Where what?
Later on down the film, he tracks down
Yeah,
Ray,
Yeah.
and then
and
he
Chewie
gets
rips his arms out. Yeah,
right. Do you think it would have been better if he hadn't?
I
If they had
liked
left
it in
that in there?
Solo.
Yeah.
It worked better in Solo. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
And of course, here we're learning a lot about Rey, that she's turning down the biggest payday to save a droid that she doesn't know. You know,
Again, defined by her actions here, rather than
Mm.
her just saying, "Oh, well, money doesn't matter to me." No, it's like, no, show it. It's more effective.
Right.
And okay, so here's a controversial topic. Um, Finn, force sensitivity. Now, I know that we all have different opinions on this. For me, one of the things, not only the
Tough.
mark bias, right? But I also feel like in that opening sequence where he's kind of bewildered with all the firefighting and everything going on, like I think there's like some of that rumble going on
Mhm.
in the soundtrack, and I've always felt like that's kind of an indicator in that moment that he's feeling things at a very deep level. And again,
never
maybe all
once.
wet.
I mean, never once in going up through Last Jedi did I ever even get an inkling of a thought that Finn was force sensitive.
Really, I thought. I mean, in this movie particularly, like Dave says, from the opening, when his friend dies and he starts having that bewildering moment all the way through, there was always a sensation that maybe the Force was calling out to Finn. At least that's what I got. And then later on, I mean, yeah, by Rise of Skywalker, they don't really go with it anywhere. But I felt that there was some inkling of it in there.
No, I thought it was. I thought his journey was one more of a moral journey, not a spiritual journey, I suppose. I saw
Mm.
that storyline of, him making choices between good and bad, and not, trying to, like I said, I didn't see hints that it's like, oh, homeboy's going to use the force. I didn't, I just didn't see that. Not, I've been accused of being the most oblivious person on the planet, so I get that. But it's but the other thing is, we all have to remember is that we were taught a long time ago, and we all forget that the Force is in, well, Luke has to remind us in The Last Jedi that the Force is in every living thing, and
Right.
it's just, are you the type of person that you're, a little bit more open to what it's trying to speak to you, or are you cutting yourself off from it? Han Solo closes himself off to it. He reacts in the moment, and in very, you know, just in a very humanistic way. Well, humanistic is a bad word, but you know what I mean. He's not, okay, I need to stop and gain my composure here and think a little bit more about what I'm doing and see what nature's trying to tell me to do. So, but everybody has the capabilities. It's, whether you work at it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that I have a problem with Finn being force sensitive in The Rise of Skywalker. That is fine. But I did not see really any breadcrumbs in the moment. So.
And now, I think that part of it was the marketing, right? And
Right.
again, it's a misdirect, right? He ends up with the saber. You're thinking, okay, wow, okay, so he's going to become a Jedi, maybe two, or instead of her. And it's a misdirect ultimately. And like you said there, in the context of this particular story, his journey is a moral one. And,
Well, and in
and
The
it works
Last
really
Jedi as
well.
well, because he's got the same story in The Last Jedi as he does this movie. But anyway,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like there's a different conversation, but I do think his story works in this movie. I think most of these characters' stories work. For me, I guess what I would wonder is Ray the absolute clear protagonist of this movie, or is it a little bit more
Well,
opaque?
you talk about, no, I don't think, well, I don't know if you look at it from the, I guess everybody's got their own hero's journey arc. It's different than A New Hope in that respect, because
Right.
Han was already firmly on his path. I am working for me. And I'm stuck doing this job. Princess Leia was firmly in her path. Luke was the only one who was, not where he wanted to be and wanted something bigger. That was hit us across the face. In this one, you got Rey, who is, like you said, alone, and you can tell that wanting more. You have Finn, who's not liking where he is and wants, to go someplace different. Poe is where he knows he needs to be, but I mean, even like when you mentioned he goes into the Star Destroyer, he's in kind of awe of that. So everybody's got their journeys. Whereas, like I said, I think in the original trilogy, it was really just Luke who had the hero's journey.
It just occurred to me, it's kind of interesting that Kylo's path is very similar to his father's in this movie, in that Han was a very well realized person, and he ultimately, by the end of the movie, had to make a choice that kind of went against character. And Kylo was faced with that same situation in this movie.
So people were bent out of shape from the get-go because this was like just a total rehash of A New Hope. We're not going to dive down that path. We're going to stay kind of on the sidewalk here and ask, what do you think they expected? I mean, if this was not, for the people who are most vocal, what do you, I guess, what have you read? What do you think? What did people want?
I don't know what they wanted, to be honest.
But isn't that, I'm going to interrupt you because that's what I do. Isn't that the Twitter culture? It's like we complain about things, but we don't stop to say, this is what, this is my solution for it. I'm going to complain about this movie because it's a rehash of A New Hope. Then it's like, so what'd you want? And then they're like, it's not my Star Wars. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Dave.
Well, I think it's again, it's very deliberate, right? It's meant to bring in it's a crowd pleaser, bring in the crowds, please them. And again, a lot of people had the exact opposite reaction. This is not my Star Wars. A lot of people were like, this is my Star Wars. My Star Wars is back, right after the prequels. And that was their reaction to this, and that was the intention. They went so far as to sort of basically not even acknowledge the prequels at all, and it was kind of a thing for a while where everyone's like, well, what about the prequels? Are you even going to acknowledge them? And so, like, the politics thing is a perfect example of that. Like, they went so far the other direction with it. It's like you have no understanding of the political situation in the galaxy in this movie versus the prequels where, they're in the Senate chambers and debating taxation and everything else. And so they went from one extreme to the other in this movie. And again, intentional. But I was fine with it. I mean, for me, like somebody who I've voiced this, I was like, yes, this is a bit of a rehash in some ways. I wish they would be a little more creative next time around. But that was my caveat with it. It's like, okay, you're setting the story up here, setting up the characters, trying to bring in the audiences and get them hooked. Get the candy in the van, get the kids in the van with the candy. And then you give them something really cool and creative the next time around. And that was always my expectation, that they would do that. And I thought that they mostly did.
So for a couple things, I will argue with a lot of people when they say, it's like, we just had the same old TIE fighters and, they just were a little bit stylized, a little bit different. We had the same Star Destroyers, but just stylized. It's like, look at the automobile, for crying out loud, and look at a Mustang from 1972 and compare it to a Mustang, a new one today. you can still pick them out of a lineup. You know, it's a Mustang. You know, it's one's just more stylized than the other. So the ship thing bothers me. So let's go in the DeLorean and let's go back and say, hey, JJ, here's what you need to do. Don't make it a desert planet. Just put it like in a meadow. Make Jakku look like Kansas. Okay.
Or Iowa.
Or Iowa, but I said Kansas because Dave's from Kansas. But you know
That's
what I
Iowa
mean?
'cause,
Do you
borrowing
think
Star
do you think you do everything the exact same except for make Jakku Iowa? And do you think people pitch as big of a fit? I don't. I think it's because when we see sand, we think Tatooine and we think, ugh, come on, get a new idea. And I think if you just put it in a meadow, then I think people stop. They don't go down that rabbit hole.
But I also think it's part of the nature of what JJ's trying to do. We always go back to the George Lucas quote about
No, I
the movies
agree with you on that. I've said it.
So-
I've said it a gazillion times. You do this because it's to make people like, okay, I'm in Star Wars. But I'm saying we're getting in the DeLorean and say, JJ, everybody's going to get pissed at you because it looks like you're on Tatooine. Let's put it in Kansas, and so he does. And do you think? I'm not asking you why he did it. I'm saying, do you think people have as big of a problem? Or are they? Is there still the argument that this is just a rehash of A New Hope?
I think some of the rehash arguments would go away, but it would be replaced with something else.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I that wouldn't be as effective as a storytelling device. That environment.
See,
This environment tells you a lot
and since Dave just froze up, see,
about Ren. Living in Iowa, it's like, oh well, this place doesn't look so bad. She doesn't look like she has such a bad life. And
never been to Iowa before.
I have.
I have to. But no, you know,
I've been to Nebraska.
But you know, the thing is, actually, I'll take the argument a little bit differently because I would say, why are you wasting your time calling this Jakku? Just make it Tatooine. You know, or in the Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, we're in Endor. Well, no, it's Kef Bir. It's like, just call it Endor. I mean, what's wrong with that? People go home. You know, it's like some things happen. It's like, you know, I talk about music history. It's like Vienna. Everything was happening in Vienna. I didn't sit there in music history and say, why don't they go someplace else? It's like, that's where things were happening for some cosmic reason, you know? So if you're going to make it look like Tatooine, then just call it Tatooine.
But I think that part of the problem was they did that in the prequels and people immediately had an issue with it. Yep. They're like, oh my God, Anakin Skywalker was in Tatooine. Why is it that they got to go back to Tatooine? Wouldn't they remember when Luke Skywalker know about Anakin Skywalker? You know, so these are not new arguments. That's the catch. It's everybody. The problem ultimately goes back to everybody in there has in their minds what a Star Wars movie is and should be. And when we doesn't match that, we have a problem. And
I'm sorry, I'm going to take us on a different topic because we missed it. They're in the Falcon now, and that is the best character reveal of about any movie ever.
The garbage will do,
and you get the theme. You know that it's like.
I knew that's where they were headed with that, and I like in the back of my head, I'm like, I know where they're going with this, and it was still executed so beautifully. I didn't care that I knew what they were going to do. It was so wonderful. It was perfect.
I love the fact that they almost immediately go, well, we need a pilot. We got a pilot. That's her, you know. You know, the movie did face some criticism later on for some of that, but it's like, no, she knows what she's doing. She lives her life on ships. So, of course, she's going to know how to somewhat do some of the stuff, but even if her first flight is running from the First Order and getting shot at.
But again, if we want to use what we've seen as you know the past as prologue, you know, let's go back to the Phantom Menace, and it's like Anakin's one hell of a pod racer. It's like, well, how did he learn how to do that? Well, he didn't. He just kind of figured it out, and he just had these instincts, you know. So this should be tipping us off to Rey right now that you know.
Right, we should see the similarities here.
Right.
You know.
It's I don't also don't want to like just skip over how funny this movie is. Like it's
Mhm.
entertaining. It's really like there a lot of these jokes land really well.
They do.
Um, and that's not necessarily always easy to do. Like we've all groaned at some of the jokes in some of these movies. Um, but yeah, like the character work here is really really good, but so the jokes are good too. Um, and this is designed to be the crowd pleaser, right? So they nailed some of those crowd pleasing elements.
I just love this chase scene through the downed star destroyers and everything. Um,
Yeah.
I still want to know what this person says after the TIE fighter crashes. I've never figured it out. But
Free
anyway,
lunch.
yeah. Um,
Oh, you know what this reminds me of though? Like them flying through the debris, right?
Mhm.
Return of the Jedi, they fly through the Death Star.
yeah,
That's where they sort of established that. And I was thinking back to it when we were talking about best space battles. Like we never even mentioned um, that, like that they're flying through the freaking Death Star, and that was like such a unique idea.
yeah.
And now we've seen it in Star Wars over and over and over again. We've seen it in every other movie under the sun. Um, but yeah, Return of the Jedi did it first.
And this is such a badass move too.
Mhm.
Killing the engines, getting the guns, facing the TIE fighter. You know, and the camera work in this whole chase sequence is just awesome too.
Right, it does a good job. It almost feels like a ride, and I'm sure Devin tells about riding, flying the Millennium Falcon. But it's very much that idea of okay, we're gonna put you in an action sequence because we haven't done that for the last 3 minutes, and here you go. And I think this is one of the moments where the movie just hits the line of being a Star Wars movie perfectly. Okay, so who's flying the ship right now?
Well, that's the problem, right? That's why they end up getting captured. But I like the two of them here. They're just like, yay, we're so excited, and they're young and eager and happy, and
And BB-8 doing his double take to Finn
Mm,
again. It was just great acting with that droid. And of course, I
mm.
mean, they could do things with BB-8 that you can't do with R2. And I love me some R2D2, but BB-8 can swivel his head around, and look like what? Um,
By the way, okay, so here's further proof that the whole Ray Palpatine wasn't planned. This would have been a great moment for them to go, "I'm Ray," and they go, "Ray who?" And just Ray, and they didn't. They just went, "I'm Ray," and then they go to, you know, the explosion on the ship.
is this whole thing with Kylo just being like, blowing gaskets every now and again, that also gets kind of dropped. Um, you know,
After Last Jedi, yeah.
no, well, no, I think it's like pretty much way after he smashes his helmet, then
Mm,
he doesn't pitch his fits anymore, which actually kind of makes him. I kind of liked it as a villain because Vader was always in control,
mhm.
and here it's like Kylo would try to be in control, and then he'd just throw a hissy fit.
Showing you the differences, showing you that Vader was always in command, was always knew his place.
Well, but
Whereas
as an audience member, I'm always now on edge as to
when it's gonna go
what are we
out,
going to get, But
yeah.
that this is what I was something's going on here because they wrote the line in "What girl?"
right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows something that seems like Luke. There is another.
Right.
It didn't seem like it said they were joined with a girl. It said, well, what girl? What are you talking about? But that's not his reaction. It was like, is it that girl? So that made me think that something he knew her, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
By the way,
that's why my
some
theory. I'm sorry. That's why my theory from the get go was that she was Han and Leia's after they had Ben. Ben finds out somewhere that he has a sister, and I guess that all made sense in my head. That is not the way it played out, but anyway. So
By the way, I love that little moment, right? Interaction between Finn and BB-8, where he's trying to get him to
Yeah.
say the name of the planet system where they're at.
And he
Yeah,
doesn't speak droid. He doesn't speak droid.
droid, please.
Yeah.
Please.
It's funny. Everybody's like, "I love the thumbs up." Yeah, everybody lost it in the theater the first time I watched that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was flipping them off. I don't know why. That's where my head went. Everybody else is like, "He's giving them thumbs up," and I was like, "Oh yeah, thumbs up. Okay." Yeah.
By the way, I love the interaction. This is one of the first times I'm going to say, I love the interactions and the dynamic that Finn and Ray have with one another. I think that's one of the strongest things that the trilogy has, and it's surprising. I mean, and I kind of get okay, they have to kind of go separate ways in Last Jedi, but I'm surprised they didn't lean on it stronger in Rise of Skywalker
Well,
because
see,
it's one of the highlights here.
that's why I thought. I mean, from the get go, I thought Ray and Finn were going to become like brother, sister, best friends type of relationship, and that Ray and Poe were going to be the thing because their interaction at the very end of the Last Jedi.
Was very much a relationship interaction.
Yeah, because
Han
I'm Ray, and
Han
like,
and
yeah, I
Leia.
know who you are, you know. And this right here, yeah, I mean, JJ just knew how to, I mean, just keep people all excited.
Yep.
I mean, here comes Chewie and Han, and we're home, and that was written for people our age,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's the exact what you're saying about earlier, Dave. You know, people ticked off about the prequels, you know. So, but this movie was written to get us curmudgeons back into Star Wars. So that's why South Park had the member berries. Member AT-ATs, member Hoth, member Tatooine.
They just from the moment they announced the casting that the big three were coming back, I think everybody was in at that point. All the old fans were. It's like, oh gosh, the big three, they're back together, right? And I don't think people understood. I know maybe a lot of people did, but I think some people didn't understand what that meant for the story. Which is like, if you're bringing these three people back, they're not going to have the happy ending that they had in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we going to tell the story of in this movie from their perspective? And it's going to be about age, and it's going to be about regret, and it's going to be about the mistakes that we make. And to JJ's credit, I think he does a great job with that stuff in this movie, and I think Ryan Johnson does a great job with that stuff in the second movie as well. Those sorts of themes, but it's like, be careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
because he wanted those three back, but it's like, well, you're going to get them, but not in a happy way.
So
Right.
here's the thing that's I think it'd be interesting because The Last Jedi takes a lot of criticism, and there's one big difference between The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, and that's in The Force Awakens. I should have taken a stopwatch because this is always the thing I think about every time I watch this movie. It's like there is some big catastrophe or stressful situation they need to deal with like about every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can cook an egg to this. It's like The Last Jedi sits and breathes for a while. You know, and we're going to talk about some things, and I'm going to slowly fly through space, you know, and it's like, yeah, we're being chased, but it's really slow. So I guess that is one of the things in this movie that it's just, I think it was a little less about story and more about keeping people having fun. So we got to ride it like a roller coaster, where it's like we're going up and we're going down, we're going up and we're going down. But on another note, I will say, having read a lot of books that have Han Solo as a character, nobody can write for Han Solo like the Kasdans. Sorry, it's you got, if you want to know how to make your Han Solo's story successful, you got to study how they wrote for him, because there's a cadence, there's a, you know, a rhythm. It's just, it was well done here.
That said, I will ask: did we need the scene with the Rathars?
That's my point. That's my point. We need something happening. It reminds me of John Peters. Like we need a Thagnarian snare beast or whatever it was. We need a big spider. You know, they needed something for them to react to. You know, we don't need the gangs here because Han Solo is not being chased by anybody after this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess where I would give the movie a lot of credit is that despite that, like they made that choice, like we're going to make sure there's an action beat on the dot every 5 minutes. Despite that limitation, they were able to really tell a coherent story and do it across multiple characters. There was like a character progression for so many of these people where they end up at a different place than where they began. And it's just, they didn't drop the ball in that way. And I think like that's really, really
but I think
credit.
I think what makes sense here, though, is instead of two rival gangs that we don't have anything to do with ever again, is make this a First Order boarding party. You know, make it Phasma and some troops or whatever that board, and then, you know, our heroes escape and, you know, fly off in hyperspace and end up at, you know, Maz Kanata. So you're always being chased by the same villain and not being chased in one scene by the First Order and another scene by the two gangs, and then another scene, you know what I mean? And again, it's neither here nor there. It's an enjoyable movie, but it just seemed this just kind of seems to be like, oh crud, we need something for them to run from. So
I think part of the point of the gangs is to show us that Han has fallen into these old habits.
That's true. That's true.
And again, it's sad.
Should have been Boba Fett. Remember Boba Fett?
Well, no, but it's something we discussed in one of the earlier episodes. I think it's absolutely right. Is that when their family kind of falls apart because what happens with Ben, Han goes back to being the smuggler. Leia goes back to being the rebel, the revolutionary, because it's where they're most themselves.
Yeah. And it's familiar to them. It's comfortable. But it represents a regression too. It shows that they're not really dealing with what's important, which is Ben.
I will also say that, getting back to my timing thing here, about every 5 minutes, I don't think A New Hope has this many action beats.
Oh no.
Well,
yeah, not at all.
Yeah, what's interesting, for example, like take the Death Stars, not the run, but when they get captured in the Death Star. From that point through when they escape, there's action beats and moments in it. I mean, we even have a whole sequence when they're caught in the trash compactor.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it ebbs and flows. It picks up and then it releases, slows down, builds up again, releases. So there's a number of minor sequences in that gigantic whole section of the movie. So it allows it to feel like it isn't. Like it's not just one thing. It's a multiple different things. You know, whether it's the duel between Ben and Vader, whether it's Han chasing after the stormtroopers, or them running away from the stormtroopers, Luke and Leia, swinging away. All this. So it's all these, moments interspersed, but together they make the big old sequence. But yeah, it's they find a way to balance it out so it doesn't feel so obvious. But it's not a new location. Action beat. New location. Action beat.
So when Chewie gets shot, did you guys in the theater say, "Oh no, you don't kill Chewbacca"? If they can't, when he gets shot, that was. I mean, when he got shot, I was like, no.
To be honest, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, that was a different sound. I hadn't heard him make that sound before. I'm like, he's hurt. Oh wow, but I didn't think they were gonna kill him or anything.
One thing we didn't talk about, this is way back on Jakku, and the thing I love, because I love, we talked about the interaction between Finn and Rey. One of the best things that they wrote in there was when Finn kept trying to take her hand, and she says, "Quit trying to take my hand. I can run by myself." I love that they did that to, just set up straight away that, she don't need a man to, to get her where she needs to be. So. And I've always loved the interaction between Rey and Han too. And that's why, so from here on out, when we have Rey and Han in the cockpit, you talk about misdirection. The way this is acted, shot, and written, it seems like he knows who she is. So we're not quite there yet. What'd you think of Hugungus Snoke?
I don't know. It seemed like a visual trick at the time, but I also was like, was he really that big? I don't know.
I always love the idea that it was reversed, that he was appearing so massive because he was so tiny.
What'd you think of Snoke as the big baddie?
Emperor Redux.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was what it was. He served his purpose. There's somebody at the end of the leash for Kylo, and so that was his role. And I did figure we'd get more information about him eventually, and we really didn't.
And did this Snoke feel like, or did the Snoke in The Last Jedi feel like this Snoke? Because I don't think so. It seems like almost two totally different characters.
They're a smidge different.
This is more a lot like, you remember the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back?
The old Emperor?
The original Clive, Rebel was the voice. This felt a lot like that. Like it was a placeholder for the character we're going to meet later on.
Monkey Woman.
Monkey
Woman, right?
Monkey Woman, yeah. Monkey Woman. Monkey felt like Monkey Woman. And then the real Snoke we're going to meet in the next movie, which allegedly we did.
Yeah, that's why I just sort of rolled with it when Last Jedi came around. I was just like, okay, they improved him. This is I know that he's a little different, but I was like, well, this is an improvement. He's a little more menacing. He's a little more tangible, a little more in your face.
So it was interesting in that whole interaction, though, is that they just came out straight out and said it, that Ben is Han's son.
And Leia's kid.
So there's no, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's kind of interesting that they didn't save that for the reveal. So it made you wonder, okay, what is the reveal they're going to be giving me? And I love Chewie, giving Finn a hard time.
I'll just very briefly circle back to your Rathtar question. I didn't like that scene at first, the first time I saw it, because it felt derivative and it felt CGI, and it didn't. I don't know. It felt unnecessary. But I do like it for Han's character, and it did give us an all-time great line, which is "Tell that to Kanji Club."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which replies by like, "Tell that to Kanji Club."
Of course, all the fun callbacks, the chessboard, and he pulled out the remote droid earlier.
The remote, yeah. The way they reconstructed the Falcon was incredible. I mean, this does, and I can't wait until I get to go to Galaxy's Edge. And by the way, here, okay, so here's one of my, I don't know. We got a little portion of the map. If I gave you a little portion of a map, do you think you'd be able to figure out what country you were in if you had this whole thing just seems a little like, I mean, this was kind of a loose premise. I don't know. We have a chunk of a map. We don't know where this is. It's like if I gave you a little chunk, you'd be able to figure out, eventually where it is. Anywho, but
like I said, it's. I mean, we've seen maps of the galaxy, and then we have the whole unknown regions and whatnot. So,
I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's just that idea of there are ways that you probably somebody like Han should be able to discover what this is, but it's a concept. It's the idea of, look, they're all fighting for this last piece of knowledge, but that everybody has to have.
No,
But
but
ultimately, it's not going to be as big of a deal.
we've talked about this
Now,
before. The bigger thing that's happening here right now is that Han Solo is confirming all of the mumbo jumbo.
all the hocus,
Yeah, I mean, it's. I thought that was that we saw that in a trailer, right? But then when I saw this in the theater, I was just like, that is one of the most awesome moments of this movie, is that he is confirming Jedi and the Force when he said it all seems a bunch of simple tricks and nonsense.
Well, I love this look that Daisy really gives about they're never thinking there was that much green in all the
And
galaxy.
that's a look of guilt from Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Now,
look
here's my
of
thing.
guilt and shame from Han Solo. And that's why I thought, okay, yeah, man, I feel bad for dumping her on a desert planet.
But the thing is, from the first encounter, he's not playing like, oh crap, my kid found me.
You're correct. You are correct.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a Maury moment.
But I'm not wrong, am I? I mean,
No,
the
no,
way
no, no.
the way that whole thing is
He's
played.
aware, and whatchamacallit, and Maz is about when she asks him who's the girl, the look he's gonna give her confirms that initial look of, oh yeah, he knows what she's all about.
I love Big Deal.
Yeah,
Got a little joke here. Got
women
another
always figure out the truth.
Did you just call me Solo?
So, like, again, he identifies this potential in her right away, in the same way that Luke, he saw something in Luke right away, and it was like, "Why don't you come with me?" At the end of A New Hope, right before the final Death Star battle, and like here's kind of a similar thing. It's like, "Why don't you come with us?" Regardless of what the intention was of the story, whether she was going to be related to him or anyone else. I like that little kind of callback, and it's like, oh yeah, he sees something in her.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because the Return of the Jedi Han Solo, which I mean, yeah, that was his character developed to a more warm, fuzzy, I'll give the Ewok a hug, type of a guy. I like that we're back to the, gruff exterior, gooey center, type of that he'll show the soft side and then quickly go back to being gruff. I mean, that just was always the good Han Solo, By the way, in Maz Kanata's courtyard here, you will see a flag in the upper left. That is the 501st flag, the one with the stormtrooper. And all of the pod racer flags from Phantom Menace are in there as well.
So upcoming, I feel like Maz's interactions with Finn, again, they sort of underscore, because she's connected to the Force more so than a lot of these other characters. I think like she takes a special active interest in both of them. She's like, who's the girl? So she's interested in Rey. But she's also sort of taking Finn under her wing. And I thought like that was another potential clue that he might be Force sensitive eventually.
And as much as I like Rian Johnson and I like The Last Jedi, if with what he did with Maz Kanata, he should have just not had Maz Kanata in that movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because her role in this movie is to get them the thing they need to, continue on. So her role could have been done in the whole saga with just this scene.
So
she gets Rey what she needs to, to kickstart her journey, You know, gets Han going on the right track. You're right. She's kind of like it's like they all walked into the bottom of the cup tea room down on Royal, and got in the medium there was saying doing tarot card reading and just set everybody on the right path. But Dave, I'm sorry, you're gonna say something.
Oh, it wasn't really very important. There was a character that looked like in the band there. I think it was in the band. It looked like Hondo Anaka.
You know who did the music for Maz's bar? Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah. There you go.
Makes sense.
Nice little factoid.
Jabba Flow. And then, of course, I did not expect to see Darth Vader's helmet here.
His dark helmet?
Yeah. And that's a story. Okay, now, since seeing this movie, I want the story of how did he come to get Vader's helmet. Has that been told somewhere?
Not that I can think of.
He's obsessed not only with Vader, but with these sorts of talismans, right? So he's Vader's helmet. When Luke's saber shows up eventually, he's like, "That's mine. That belongs to me."
But again, has any of that been told in anything? Or
I don't
anybody
think
listening
so.
to this, if we're missing out on some of the summer reading, let me know, because that is of great interest to me. Because I mean, that seems like an awesome story of how I'm going to make my way to Endor and find this, that, or the other.
And I've never really reconciled it with his character. And it's like, did he, like, I don't know where he ends up with that. Like, what does it mean eventually for him? Like, he's still holding on to some of these things, I think, later on, but he hasn't really turned the page. He hasn't really grown. And I guess, like, that's intentional. But I don't know. Like, I thought, like, part of that was, to show that he's sort of pretending. Like, I'm a fanboy. And again, he's like a surrogate for the audience. It's like, oh gosh, this stuff's important. Oh, that's really important. And so he places importance on it. And so it gives it importance in the story. And that sort of validates all of our feelings at the same time. But it's like, by the same token, it's still kind of cool. There's like an Indiana Jones sort of aspect to it. Like there's this mystical talisman, and it may have secret powers, and whoever may have it may have the ability to conquer the other people, and they don't really pay any of that off. But I like it. I think it's kind of a fun storytelling device.
I love that Maz just comes up to Finn's face and just look at him and finally sizes him up and down, recognizes what he's after, and goes, "Nope, there you go. There's your answer."
All right, guys. I don't want to jump on the train of Omega is Force sensitive or going to be a Force wielder or anything, but I'm watching this now. I'm seeing a lot of similarities between Rey and Omega. From like I said, just the instincts, the fact that how much Rey observes a lot, says little, observes a lot, and Omega, same thing in the Bad Batch. I mean, it's just kind of weird.
It's an interesting comparison to make, and we'll
and I'm not sold on the fact that Omega is Force sensitive. I'm just not, but could be. I mean, who knows? Because but anyway, getting back to the movie here. I always thought this was kind of an interesting placement of Rey being up higher than Finn, instead of being on the same level. That's
she's got the high ground.
Well, I mean, it's. Why do you make that choice? In what's going on here.
I mean, she does have the high ground.
She does. She's on the morally right path.
Yeah.
But is she? Because her concern are twofold. Her concern is get BB-8 to Resistance, and then get back to Jakku. Like she's not thinking it beyond, hey, the resistance might need my help. I'm have some skills I can offer. I'm a pretty good pilot. I'm a pretty good mechanic. No, she's thinking, I will get BB-8 back to the resistance, and then I'm
Well, but
already gone too long.
also in her mind, it's about getting Finn back to the resistance because she still
Right,
thinks that he's a resistance,
pilot. Yeah, I
fighter.
remember.
But
Well, she's at least following through to speak
Right.
to the difference between the two. Like he's just like, I'm cutting bait, I'm out of here, and she's like, we've got to see this part of it through. And so, yeah, no, I mean, in that respect, she definitely has the high ground. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that was probably intentional.
so coming up to the force back scene, as they call it,
Mm-hmm.
her eating mushrooms when she touches the lightsaber. Um, this whole sequence is really really cool. Um,
BB-8 coming down the steps.
Maybe coming down the
I
steps.
know, right?
He's got to figure out a way to do it. He doesn't have rocket jets like R2 does.
And I don't know how. I don't know. I still. Was the whole purpose of this thing just to say, "Hey, kids, she's a Jedi," or "She's gonna be a Jedi," or "Hey, kids, she really. I mean, she really does have the Force." But the fact that it is again Luke Skywalker's lightsaber,
I think
and
that's
this
part. I
this
think that's
happens.
part of it
Would
because
it have, if it would have been just, let's say,
A lightsaber.
a lightsaber, Mace Windu's lightsaber, which would have been the same reaction, or was it? I mean, Maz says as much. Now it calls to you. This
now,
is this is a very Excalibur type of a moment here.
I was thinking Sword in the Stone.
mm-hmm.
Very much the call to adventure.
Story wise, again, there's like all the things you guys are saying, but again, I think part of it is, does everybody, do general audiences recognize that that's Luke's lightsaber? Maybe not.
Maybe
And
not.
so some of this is to kind of show you like, oh wow, yeah, I've seen this stuff before. Oh wow, is this?
But still, so regardless of that, I mean, still we're in this thing where she's seeing glimpses of it's just, I'm just trying
Knights of Ren, her past. Yeah,
we're
there's a
seeing
lot
stuff of the
here.
future,
Yeah.
and then of course you get Ewan McGregor at the end. These are your first steps. Thought that was a nice little ad.
Mm-hmm.
And some people kind of had this like, I don't know, you had old, Alec Guinness saying Ray, and you had young Obi-Wan saying these are your first steps. It's like, I don't know. Ghosts all don't have to be just one age, I don't know.
Yeah, they don't have to take the same form on all the time either.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, just to cut that one off at the pass, because if we ever get a Ewan McGregor ghost cameo in the future, I'll be fine with it.
I always said it depend. I don't think it would have made sense for the Ewan McGregor ghost to interact with Luke, because Luke that would be like my the 20-year-old my dad's ghost coming and talking to me. That's not, I don't recognize that guy. You know what I mean? So, but by the way, so back to the Force Awakens here. I love this interaction with Maz, but oh my God, again, a gazillion things that are not paid off in the next two movies.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, the cheap shot of that's a story for another time. Like, thank you. Okay, that's coming.
But not.
No, it ain't. What's others, it just, there's just, a lot of stuff that just doesn't get paid off here.
And there in the hero's journey is the rejection of the call moment.
Yeah.
Where she goes, nope, I don't want any part of this. Gotta get back to my downed AT-AT.
Thank you.
Or as the new generation are saying, AT-AT.
You want people to lose their minds, they should have put an Ewok in, just like sit next to a tree right there. Okay, so Star Killer Base. What'd you?
Eh,
I mean,
It was all right. What I find funny, when we get to the scene where they finally do the description of the base, and they have to show Death Star and here's Star Killer Base, and Han just goes, so it's bigger. It's like, yeah, basically that's it. It's bigger.
so do you think it would have been more acceptable to you, Dave, if they would have just had the Exegol fleet, show up out of nowhere and destroy the Republic, those planets? They could have. I mean,
I mean, some show of force probably was required for the story, but
Hux is another moment or another character that we got cheated on. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
The space station planet thing. At least they did it in a slightly different way.
Yeah,
that's what I'll give them credit for. So,
and this it's the planet. Is it Ilum? Right.
Ilum. Yeah.
So it's the planet
where
all
the confirmed. Has that actually been confirmed?
I believe so. And it's the planet where all the Padawans went and got their kyber crystals, right? Yeah. And then it was in Jedi Fallen Order, right?
Yep. There's a whole sequence where you have to go into Ilum and find your new kyber crystal for your lightsaber. And let's see, location Ilum, Starkiller Base is located on the forested ice planet of Ilum, rich in kyber crystals.
All right, so here he looks up. He has no reason to look up.
Yep, he really doesn't.
So there's like another reason potentially
that's fair.
He might be force sensitive. But again, this weapon is like insanely like impossible, right? Mm-hmm. They're shooting these giant lasers through space, and I guess they're sort of traveling instantaneously, but not quite. And
so here's the thing:
nuking planets, and
they just showed, the New Republic people, right before they get blowed up, and we're supposed to feel sad, scared, something for them, and I just I feel bad. This is gonna sound horrible, but I just don't. Well, and I think there's a deleted scene, right? Where we actually get some of those people like, hey, here's Dave and Fredo talking about stuff. And then, 15 minutes later, we're going to blow them up. And you go, I remember those guys. Oh, no.
Well, there was a scene where the girl that you see come up to the front of the shot speaks with Leia. And it's that idea of Leia trying to still convince the New Republic that the First Order is a big threat. And so far, and this, they finally, they're still talking about it, and then they get blown up.
And by the way, the shots here, the Apocalypse Now shot of the TIE fighters with the sun behind it, and actually seeing, even on Jakku, I loved seeing like TIE fighters in the atmosphere. You know what I mean? Not just flying around space, but,
So here she gives it to him. Again, maybe that's just an absence of Rey not being there. But she could have handed it to Han or Chewie. Mm-hmm. This mostly all works really well for me. I like when the Resistance shows up. The Resistance theme for me is like a really cool, triumphant
you mean the Pirates of the Caribbean theme?
It's just it's like really cool because it's like, here come the heroes.
I
like Poe.
It sounds a little bit like Monty Python. Dun, 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 dun.
Well, if they were galloping through these woods, then I would agree with you, but they're not. They're actually running.
So as Bracer Robin isn't running away.
That's right.
Like, they wrecked that building. Look at this. There's nothing left. It's like a wall.
I will say, knowing that, okay, so we got the idea that Rey is, has got the Force, even though we've always said, yeah, everybody has, the Force with them. But anyway, but you could tell also that they set her up to be, there's a lot of dark side in her.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
because
she hasn't picked a path. She's just powerful.
But when she's shooting a blaster or when she's, using the lights or whatever, the aggressiveness, just the scowling, her facial expressions are all, I'm gonna give you a world of hurt. I love Han shooting the bowcaster.
But the exception is the final scene with Kylo when she finds the Serenity, when they have the sabers locked.
Well, she does,
and you see the reflection in her eyes
yeah.
when she opens them, and it's like she's found her serenity in that moment.
Yeah, then she's a little bit more like Luke at the end of Jedi, but she still has a lot of, after she knocks down Kylo, then she paces, and we'll get to that obviously later. She paces around like a tiger that's going to, chomp off his head. So, like I said, they do set it up that she has a potential for either one equally.
Right.
Okay, so this was a good example of the Phasma wasting. Like, you got Finn with a little lightsaber action. He could have been battling Phasma in that.
Not some rando stormtrooper with a
right.
Traitor.
With a
traitor. Traitor. So again, we have traitor. So I love traitor.
Which I think it's TR-88.
Yeah. TR-8R, right?
And I know people have kind of been like down on this as well, but I love the X-Wings right above the water.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
This is an awesome scene,
and it's all just because it looks cool. That's something we haven't seen, so it's. So I think JJ was making good decisions of, all right, we need to give them things they've seen before, but let's change it enough so it's like, oh, we haven't seen them fight, like I said, within the atmosphere before. Right. We haven't seen TIE fighters and X-Wings around water. So, yeah.
Like, I love that moment where the TIE fighter skims above the water and you get the water effect after, and the X-Wings right behind it shooting. So
I like oh wow, that's a great pilot, moment too, where Poe's like takes out like 5 TIE fighters in the span of like 20 seconds, and because like you can follow the action, right? Like like it's enough for the character to verbalize it, right? So just so you know, but you can see it, and you can follow the action, and that's always my biggest critique with action scenes is like when you don't really, it's chaotic and you don't really understand. It's like there you see him take the guy out, he clearly takes the next guy out, he swoops around the thing, he takes the next one out, it's like, okay, this is cool,
right? And again, it plays kind of like you're saying in regards to the showing and not telling aspect of this movie. He's the best pilot. No, Kyle Ren said we got the best fighter pilot in the Resistance.
Right.
Well, he's here showing you.
Yep.
By the way, quick question, and maybe it's just me. Did the topography or geography of right here of Tokonada, where Kylo and Rey are facing off, does that not call back a lot? Feel similar to what they'll get into in Starkiller Base?
Yeah, I've always felt that too. It rhymes
like snowy and supposed to green, but yeah.
Right. It does kind of rhyme in that way. I like that too.
Right, the idea kind of being this is our first encounter, and Rey's clearly frightened. She is clearly feels overwhelmed and overmatched, and the next time they encounter one another in a situation like this, she's not afraid of him.
Yeah. It's she plays it really well, and it's filmed really well too, because you really get that feeling of like being stuck in a nightmare where you're getting chased by something and you can't get away from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, now we're starting to set up why Aaron has a problem with all the Reylo people is because their relationship from the get-go is all about power and abuse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I mean, I that's why in Rise of Skywalker, I wish they wouldn't have kissed. I have no problem with him having a redemption arc. I wish he would have just saved her, smiled, and died. You know, it's the payoff to the Reylo people is just like, yes, girls, you can save him. You know, that type of thing. This from the get-go, their relationship was set up on abuse and power.
Let me
Well,
let me ask you this: if they had reversed that arc of their relationship, if they had reversed the next two movies, and you get the kiss in the second movie, and then in the third movie, her shutting the door on him, literally. If that had been the way that it had played out, would you have been more okay with it?
I've been more okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and I think
I
part.
yes, I would have been more okay with that because I mean that's unfortunately an all too common tale, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, so yeah, I think I would have been more okay with that story. The way it panned out this way, it was kind of bothersome. And by the way, I'm sorry, C3PO here. That was the most brilliant thing that they did. the C blocker, you know, C3PO.
Perfect. Fredo, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
No. Yeah, well, I wanted to say, well, yeah. Part of me was surprised when they started spinning the Reylo thing, because it really doesn't come from this movie. It really starts coming out of Last Jedi and the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt like
Yeah,
it
but
was in some
this
way
movie does exist though, and that's the
true.
problem. Is that
But
so,
hold on, because the point I was trying to make was I thought that in some ways their interactions between Rey and Kylo in Last Jedi were almost like a dark mirror, upside down version of Rey and Finn in this movie.
Hmm.
You know, the idea of, because if you were to look at this movie and say who's the person, if you're going to end up having a couple out of this these characters meeting together, it's not Rey and Poe, because Rey and Poe have not said two words to one another. It's Rey and Finn, because they've established, okay, you know, how they met, their chasing, their interactions. There's some expectation on one another, which is what we see when she's standing above him and kind of calling him to not run away. So I always felt like the idea was going to be more, and it even gets reinforced at the end of Last Jedi when they end up hugging at the end. It's like he's he's only interested in helping her out, and she's trying to bring him closer to the light, so to speak. And then I always felt like in Last Jedi they were trying to flip that and show that dynamic, but in reverse, with Kylo trying to pull Rey towards the dark side. So I thought that's how they were going to play it, but you know, it was surprising that to me that apparently a lot of people saw these two movies and went, "Oh yeah, Rey and Kylo have to end up together," and I'm like, "What?" I mean,
So,
I
you
didn't
know,
get that vibe at all.
I mean, again, I really invite diverse opinions on that too. If anybody's listening to this and they have, you know, they're Raylo fan, feel free to let us know. And uh, I'm still working on you know, trying to line up somebody to come on the show at some point just to talk about that, because I think the fandom exists for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be good to get a little more insight into it. Um, but you know, I'm mostly with you guys. It's just like he's in this film. He is an abusive person.
Mm-hmm.
The second film, he has an opportunity. She opens that door for him, and he doesn't walk through it.
but
And then
he's
and
still
then she
abusive
closes the
and
door,
manipulative, even up the game in the second
right?
movie.
But then she very rightly, by the end of that movie, she's like, "You had your chance. I'm closing the door on this."
Yeah.
I love
And I
Chewie.
thought that was it.
I love Chewie telling war
Yeah,
stories here.
yeah,
Oh, I bet you were very brave.
yeah. Chewie got a lot of great moments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the when he shoots Kylo later is one of the all time
Oh yeah,
yell out loud
right.
moments in the theater.
All right, so coming up here, um, I mean, Scott Colesby doesn't know that he helped me out with this scene right here, where, first of all, I love it that BB-8 finds R2, and R2 is, but it reminds me of like when Luna would try to get Josie to play with her, because Josie didn't want anything to do with Luna at first. It's just the oldest dog and the youngest dog. Anyway, but I always had a problem with, like, why is R2 shut down? This makes really no sense whatsoever. And so the reason why I say Scott Colesby has helped me with this is because I remember after watching Endgame, I was like, where the hell was Captain Marvel throughout this whole thing? And he's like, if Captain Marvel was there, then it wouldn't have been a fair fight.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah. So if R2 is functional, we know where Luke is. We know we don't have, the whole plot is gone, because R2 knows where Luke is. He knows where he's been. He knows everything about the entire Luke. R2 is like the best friend you can have, because he ain't telling anybody anything. But they needed him out of the picture, so, but it still doesn't really explain why he's just in hibernation mode. But, it's, but that whole Captain Marvel thing, it's like, yeah, if you do have R2 running around in this movie, then from here on out it's shot, because they just get back to the base like, oh yeah, Luke's there. So.
Well, Luke is, like, again, they mention him in the opening crawl. It's like, oh, where's Luke? Where's Luke? That's the big mystery, and it's a misdirect. Because, again, if you put Luke Skywalker in this movie, he overshadows everything. And like you said, to your point, he tips the scales in such a way as well that they win, and there's never really any doubt that they win. So you take him off the chessboard. So that there's more tension about the outcome, but also so that he doesn't just suck up all the oxygen, because you have all these new characters that you're trying to establish and tell their story, and Luke would have gotten in the way. And I agree with that decision. I thought that was one of the smarter things that they did with this movie.
And what's interesting is that they turn him into the MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm.
He's the secret that everybody's trying to get to, both First Order as well as the Resistance. Their whole goal is get to the Last Jedi.
He can tip the scales.
Yep. By the way, did you see that there's some new commercial? Now that we see Adam Driver's face, and see there's some new commercial where he's a centaur.
Yep.
It just came out today. It's so we have shirtless Adam Driver again. By the way, so you talk about the sound effects when he was using the Force on Poe, right? Mm-hmm. Earlier. Here in this scene, it's incredible, because it starts and you can tell where she starts blocking him, because that sound fades a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then the pitch kind of reverses when she turns the tables on him. So that was a genius thing done by the sound crew. Listen, so you can't hear it right now if you're listening to the podcast, obviously, but I've turned this up and listen. Don't worry about what they're saying. Just listen to that effect. It is incredible.
But what they're saying matters as well too, because it's just like, again, we talk about him being this abusive person, and like he's sitting here like trying to manipulate her and tell her all this awful stuff about, and he does it. He circles back to it in the second movie. He's like, "You're nothing. You're nobody."
Well, I'm sorry. He's essentially showing her the naked pictures that he took of her. Right here, he's like, "Yeah, I see the island. Yeah, okay, I see you." He's just I'm not going to say the word because you're going to have to bleep it out. But I mean, that's why he's such a good villain. Yeah. He's such a good antagonist. But again, so.
And okay, so his arrogance is part of this too, right? And I guess he has every reason to be arrogant, because he trained under Skywalker. He basically eradicated the new Jedi Order. He's the ascending star here. He comes from royal blood.
Mhm.
So, and he has like every reason to believe in himself and think like he has like this birthright to everything. And so for us to see him get denied, is deeply satisfying for audiences because like you don't want to see him succeed. You don't want to see him win because he has every advantage. And Ray is the perfect contrast to that. She comes from nothing, has no background, self-taught, and
Now, because you just said self-taught. Sorry, I'm going to jump in here
yeah,
real quick. Because Rise of Skywalker retconned this whole thing by saying that when Rey and Kylo are together, their powers, because they're a dyad, their powers are amplified, and that's basically how Rey knew how to do all this stuff. Is because she's always at her most powerful force wise when she's close to Kylo. That was kind of the retcon. Do you like that, or do you like the fact that she, after hearing Maz say basically calm yourself and listen to the force, that she's just maybe a little bit, it's kind of like playing a video game where it's like, oh, if I push this button then this happens, and kind of figuring your a way around it, and you're finding out that you're powerful. I don't know.
I think some people called her Mary Sue because
Yeah.
of these things, And again, I never really thought that was a problem because Luke had some of the same stuff going on with him in the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
Anakin, of course, in episode 1. So it's like she's gifted. That's the point. And within the constructs of this story, this particular episode, I think it works really, really well. And again, it's partly about Kylo. It's deeply satisfying to see him get cut down to size repeatedly in the last third of this movie. But also, I think I think it works for her. And ultimately, I'm not mad about the retconning with the dyad stuff because I thought that had a lot of potential.
Sure.
They just didn't really take it into a cool new direction like I thought they could have.
By the way, that's Daniel Craig right there releasing Ray.
Yep.
He said, "I don't care what I am at. I just want to be in a Star Wars movie,
and you'll drop your weapon, and I'll
I'll
drop my weapon."
That was a great gag leading into another great gag, which is when he loses his crap and those stormtroopers turn around.
Yep.
So let's get back to the Rey finding her power stuff. We also in that Force back confirmed that former Jedi are speaking directly to her.
Yep.
And she heard those, Obi-Wan's voice, and so why can't they, we maybe not hearing it audibly on screen, but why can't they be saying, the Force has, tremendous power over the weak-minded, why can't that thought be placed and she's just listening to it and, okay, I'll give this a go. I don't know. I think a lot of people just kind of, it's toxic masculinity is what it was for a lot of it.
It is.
But
it is. And I think that the difficult aspect is we know that eventually in the story, Kylo is going to have to be redeemed, but they got a good job of explaining, no, he is really not a good guy. And he lives up to the hype. So, so it's kind of hard to believe that so many people saw in him going like, oh, no, there's a good guy in there. And they're going to end up together. It's like, wow, did not see that coming.
Well, the scene with his father,
there's a reason for that.
Which we're coming up on. And, I mean, that scene's so powerful for a number of reasons. But, again, one of the most basic things about it is let's show that this guy's an actual jerk and that he's irredeemable, basically. And so from that point on, can you come back from killing Han Solo? And for a lot of people, I think the answer was no.
That was the whole point of doing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you know, one thing I love, they're plotting, they're getting their plan together, how they're going to build it, blow this thing up. I love the fact that, hey, let's just write a bunch of bull crap and everybody will buy it. It's like, yeah, that thing has to have some sort of thermal oscillator. And you're like, yeah, it does. Yeah, and if we get that thermal oscillator blown up, then the whole thing goes down. Well, yeah, it does. what
But
the
it's
hell's
got
a,
shields.
what the
Oh,
hell's
you
a
ruined it.
thermal oscillator?
Clearly, you're onto something.
I mean, but that's I mean, so that's why I come back to that Kevin Smith story. It's like, what should I just call it, a Thagnerian snare beast? You know, it's like, yeah, do that.
Yeah, call it that.
You know, my biggest fear of The Force Awakens, quite honestly, was seeing domesticated Han and Leia. It suits neither of them. And that was my big fear, is that we're going to see Leia making blue milk and Han coming in from, you know what I mean? It's like he's coming in from, you know, harvesting whatever, and we're going to see domesticated Han and Leia, and that didn't happen, so I was really happy. You know, it created a much more interesting story. So, what'd you say, Fredo?
I said they're still themselves. You know, even though it's been 30 years and a lot of
Well, they're a great
tragedy and misery, but yeah,
they're a great couple that really have no business being married, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they're so alike that you can see where the attraction comes from, but at the same time,
they're so independent and they're so stubborn, you know.
I mean, I agree. It's an interesting thought. And again, you talk about the idea of regret. It's like, how do these two people, who are our heroes and we love them, how do they screw up to the point that the galaxy is in the shape that it's in, and their kid is the biggest bad in the galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's this tragic story of, and it's this kind of thing, this reckoning that we all have to go through as we get older, which is multifold, because like on the one hand, we're dealing with loss constantly the older that we get, right? People around us are dying, and we have to come to terms with those things. But the other side of it too is that we have to acknowledge that we have not made the changes or the difference in the world that maybe we thought we were going to. And we have to understand how to, like, you know, come to grips with all of that, and come to grips with all of our losses, and still somehow endure.
Right.
And so, like, from that perspective, it's just like such a sad story, but also kind of a necessary one. Yeah. Because it adds a layer of realism to the struggle, to see people going through stuff like that, when it's like, you know, in the first movie was just, hey, everything's great. And then Return of the Jedi, yeah, everything's great, you know. This movie's not that.
A couple of the best lines right there. We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works. And then Chewie says something, he goes, oh, really? You're cold? I mean, again, just great writing by Kasdan.
Mm-hmm.
And more stormtroopers get shot in this movie than I think we've ever seen ever.
Again, it's satisfying, right? It's like watching Kylo get one-upped. This is oh yeah, here we go. I'm in charge now.
Yeah, bring it down. But again, the Phasma character was just it was a missed opportunity. And I'm sorry, I understand people were thinking that Rey was a Kenobi, but her sneaking around and trying to escape something that looks like the Death Star does not is not evidence of her being a Kenobi. That was
Yeah.
weak sauce. And by the way, I'm sorry, but if you're all in my house, I'd rewind here. But when she looks and there are like two stormtroopers and then there's one over, it looks like by a console. If you look, it looks like he's totally peeing. Because he's kind of got his head down and his hands they're on the console, and I don't mean on the console like in air quotes, but they're on the console, but it looks like they're actually on the console with air quotes. It looks like he's peeing in the corner. So
Okay.
anyway,
I'll have to look for that.
What I love about this moment with Rey kind of getting away from the First Order is that it's paying off what we've seen her from her introduction. She's been raised up and grown up in the scrap yards of Jakku, trying to find valuable, scrap to sell. So she would know everything and every kind of way, nook and cranny around their designs, because the First Order, basically just borrowed a lot of what the Empire did. So she would have some general idea of how to get in and out and around their own base, so to speak.
was the garbage chute reference a bridge too far?
No, I liked it.
It's funny, but it's only too far because you were hoping for more out of Phasma. Again, it would have played. I think it would have been better had we left that little moment in The Last Jedi when Finn confronts Phasma about her treachery here, betrayal here, and the other stormtroopers are going like, "Wait, what? She did what?"
Yeah, they should have left that scene in Last Jedi. I totally agree.
Scenes, because that would have made this moment not only comical for this movie but relevant for the next movie. You'd have gone, "Oh yeah, no, that's what that scene is in there to pay off on the fact that Phasma, for all her toughness and all her bravado, when the chips came, when it time to stand up for her side, sold them out."
So here we go. They're attacking the thermal oscillator. They're sucking the power out of the sun.
There was another little bit of a detail there when they showed BB-8 in the back of the X-Wing. It's just a great little detail. His antenna is bending in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an attention to detail that if I'm filming, I'm not thinking of. Somebody somewhere said, they're moving, his antenna has to bend because, they're just because of, drag, whatever.
I love this moment where he's like, Han is like with the,
what's with the chin? What's the chin? So,
the two of these two didn't get enough time together. They got a lot of screen time together in this movie, but it's a tragedy that Han gets cut down because these two are awesome together.
They were. John Boyega and Harrison Ford were perfect together in this movie.
Mm-hmm. They know how to play off of one another, which not everybody can. Even with Harrison Ford being Harrison Ford, it could be quite daunting, and John Boyega really does a great job. See what I mean here? Finn tells her, "No, I came for you. I'm not interested in the rest of the galaxy. I came here to rescue you." And then they start getting into how he got away from, or how she got away from now. Escape now, hug later.
Yeah. And then Chewie handing Han his jacket.
That's going to be cold.
I think it was. Did Neil deGrasse Tyson come after this movie because they were sucking the energy out of the sun? It's just way to suck all the fun out of a movie, dude.
Well, but it's Star Wars. We have ships that go faster than light. We have space stations that blow up planets. None of this is based on science fact. This is Buck Rogers. There's Flash Gordon. There's as much science fact in this as there was in those.
Yeah, but still, they take it pretty far, don't they?
True, but what I love is the idea. And Poe kind of explains it. It's as long as we got light, we got a chance. It's a very poetic clock that they're running.
Right.
As long as there's light, we're okay. The moment it gets all dark, we're toast.
Yeah.
And so,
back to your point with Ray figuring out everything and opening all these doors and everything, it makes total sense that she would be able to do that because she was scavenging on Star Destroyers. There's no Mary Sue factor in any of that.
No.
So
It takes what we've seen her do and applies it to her current scenario. Like even right here, when she opens up the door to let Han and Chewie in, Han goes,
But
"Girl knows her stuff." Yeah, exactly.
you're
She
witnessing, however, the only railings in an Imperial or First Order vehicle.
yeah. Look, all I want is a railing. I don't even care for a race. All I want is a railing.
Yeah,
So
they
they don't follow you.
actually have railings here, except for the huge bridge across the huge chasm. But by God, OSHA makes them put railings, everywhere else.
well, yeah, if you fall the 10 feet, nobody wants that. But, if you fall into a chasm that's 300 feet deep, then that's okay.
And who knows what's down there? I mean, might be important stuff that, machinery that a corpse, grinding the gears down might destroy. But by the way,
Yeah,
okay, so
that was so insanely dangerous, that catwalk. Like, you're like, oh no. The second you see that catwalk, they're going to end up on that thing.
but my other thing is, and we'll get to it when we get to the scene where Han dies. But is there
Spoiler
some
alert. Yeah.
spoiler alert in 20 minutes? Spoiler alert for 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes, in 5 minutes. But compare his fall to say something like Palpatine's at the end of Return of the Jedi. Whereas one is very dramatic and there's all this, energy and all this stuff. In this one, they play, of course, it's Han, so he's not a Jedi, he's not a Sith, but they play it off in a similar fashion, kind of like there's a poignancy to this moment, like there's been a gigantic step taken forward. I mean, just even right now when he steps up to actually call him out, it's almost like Han is facing up to all the stuff he's been running away from. It's actually this exactly that.
So when you found out his name was Ben, did you go, what? Really?
I liked it.
Well, okay, but right the minute you heard it, you're like, yeah, Ben. Or did you were like,
Yeah.
well, that's
I was like, yeah, Ben. That was my reaction.
Now, I guess my question would have been, because really, I mean, Han knew Ben Kenobi. I mean, he's the old guy who hired him. But I would have thought if anybody was going to have a kid named Ben, it would have been Luke, not Han. But then it makes me go, why would Han name his kid? If we're borrowing a name from, the original trilogy, he's not borrowing Lando.
Well, and that was where a lot of people lost their damn minds, is because they didn't name him after. I mean, his name wasn't whatever from any of the EU books.
Oh yeah, Jason or Jaina, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or Anakin.
Which it's kind of like what Filoni's doing now, right? Where he'll take bits and pieces of those and make them part of the story now, or take names from that. It does make you wonder. It really doesn't make sense as to name him after Ben Kenobi, and I don't know, until somebody shows me that that's what he was named after. I don't know if he was. I mean, or is that just we're just assuming? But then why not just use the name from the EU books and throw people a bone? Like,
maybe, yeah, I don't know. But
I suppose there's probably too much. Like, if you give them that name, then that story of that character comes along with it, or at least the people's expectation that the story of that person comes along. So this gives Ben his own story, but
yeah, I think that's part of it. And then again, I don't know why it could have been Uncle Luke was pushing hard for the name. It's like, it could be that simple as an in-universe explanation. But
right.
Okay, so this is full circle. For these two characters, this is the most important scene in the movie, and this is why I would argue that we don't really have a clear protagonist in this movie, because Rey has nothing to do with this scene. But it's, again, you talk about for Han trying to make up for his sins, um, and reach out to his son, and his son making the wrong choice here. And I've always found, like, immediately after watching it, I compare it immediately to Return of the Jedi, because
Hmm.
at the end of Return of the Jedi, you see Luke make this similar sort of gesture. I will not fight you. Um, Pacifism is the way. This goes deeper than that because it's a familial thing, but um, it's a similar sort of vibe, which is like, I'm going to reach out to you with love rather than hate.
Hmm.
And in Return of the Jedi, Luke prevails and good wins, and here you get a saber through the chest to die. And I think the message in that, if there is one, is that that war requires sacrifice.
Hmm.
It's like you can't just expect to say, "Oh, we're gonna solve our disputes with love and with discourse," and expect things not to get a little bloody along the way.
Well, and from the standpoint of Ben Solo had been spending the better part of a decade under the thrall of Snoke. So the idea, you're just gonna turn up and tell him that you love him, and all of a sudden that's gonna flip a switch. That wasn't gonna be that easy. So I don't know. I understand. I mean, it's the Han sacrifice. It's all about facing up to his own failures, his own mistakes, and how they've helped create Kylo Ren. But I also think there's a certain point where you also have to recognize that there was, Kylo's trying to assume some agency over his life, and that agency is unfortunately rather evil.
We talked about it earlier. Chewbacca's reaction here was
Mm-hmm.
even more gut wrenching than anything. And then, can you imagine? Well, and he actually showed some mercy because he could have blown his damn head off.
Mm-hmm.
Chewbacca's that kind of shot. He winged him on purpose. It's like, could you kill your own nephew? I mean, as in essence, but. But now we're going to get the standoff in the snowy forest.
So Snoke um, is the ultimate abuser, right? And that gets revealed
Mm-hmm.
in the next movie. The way that he comes down on Kylo, and Kylo's kind of like this
Right.
victim in a way. Um, and he references this act of killing Solo and what it did to him. And
Right, splitting him.
yeah, and he talks about that. And I think if you want actual evidence of that, early on, it is him getting shot in the chest by Chewie. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you would think if he were in tune with the Force and his surroundings, he would have been able to anticipate something like that, but he was very distracted. And I think that's part of the reason that Chewie was able to get that shot in.
So I kind of get why it's there, but the whole traitor thing kind of, it seems like the Marty McFly being called chicken, motif. Um, I think he could have goaded Finn into fighting without.
Calling him, checking him for what he's done. Right.
Yeah, I mean they did set it up at the very beginning because Kylo, knew it was him.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He's getting actual enjoyment there, uh, out
Torturing him.
of
Yeah.
torturing him. Yeah, he's got the saber pressed up against his shoulder. And my wife wanted to chime in with, here we have Kylo acting like a little McClunky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I said it before, like this. I think this is one of the top moments in all of Star Wars, right here. The musical moment. What happened? I did not see this coming, honestly. That was just when Rey catches the lightsaber. That was just, like I said, the music element to it, the surprise factor to it. That it was just genius.
that's the moment where you realize she's the one.
Right.
And her first move is a Palpatine jab.
Yeah.
Just saying. I mean,
Well, you were talking earlier about how she fights very aggressively, right? And then like that's part of, probably part of her upbringing, right? And you living in a harsh place, you have to be very
Right.
strong and aggressive in order to survive.
Right. You can't be pacifist.
Yeah, it's in character in that way. But again, I love the moment coming up where she finds this peace.
no, that is awesome. I will give you that. But it's also interesting, in The Last Jedi, they did a great job of explaining this, where Luke, first of all, says equal light, equal dark. And then he's like, you went to the dark. Like, you didn't even hesitate. You went straight there. I mean, that's what's going on in this fight. She is fighting with using the dark side of the Force. She's using aggression. She's using for attack, not defense. It's but it's a very instinctual, that's what we do when you're threatened. I mean, you're not going to a place of zen,
Right. Well, it's one of those things that if you ever read anything that Bruce Lee wrote regarding fighting, is that the reason why you practice so much is that you enter into that moment of zen in a fight by by repeatedly doing it.
Yeah.
So you're not freaking out. And the reality is, in this moment, Ray is just going on instinct, on impulse, and that impulse is defend myself. And when you defend yourself like that, it's there's no training. There's very limited training in her. It's just whatever she's learned.
But she's not really defending herself, right? She's pissed.
Attacking.
She's pissed. She's like, you've killed Han, you've hurt Finn, you
must die.
You've hurt me.
This scene right here where they're fighting here, Fredo, is like you said, it really does call back to the earlier scene.
Okay. Yeah. She was afraid of him then and backing away, and here she's not backing down from him.
The also, just from a visual aspect, the darkness and the snow with the bright sabers, awesome.
Right.
I was waiting for a scene like this for 30 years.
Yeah.
This is a great lightsaber battle, but it's not an Olympic sport. This is a straight up street fight, right?
Yeah, this isn't masters going at it.
And to Dave's point, you look at her eyes right now. The sabers, the blue and the red, are in a cross pattern, and then when she opens her eyes, they're aligned.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the very first time we saw this in the theater, and I was like, ooh, that's cool.
And if you look at Kylo,
his is that way.
His are still that way. They're still crossed.
Right.
And for her, when she opens her eyes, she literally opens her eyes and figuratively opens her eyes. She sees the path forward.
And she's swinging like Luke in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
But right now, and she has, however, she's swinging like it, but she's got a lot of, that's an Anakin, swing, but she's got a lot of scowl, that's evil right there. That look on her face. I'm not saying she is evil. I'm saying she found her focus, but she went to the dark again because it's.
Because as you said, she's not trained on how to resist it in a moment of passion like this, where she's fighting for her very life.
But that's the thing that I think even Yoda started to admit, maybe in a Clone Wars episode or something like that the Jedi became too much one side. Right. That it's there, and maybe that's why I was hoping that maybe Luke would start training a little bit more of equal parts, dark side and light side. You need what he was talking about, balance. I mean, there's time where you gotta give some ass whooping and some time where you try to talk him down,
Exactly.
And I like this guy who just abandoned his post.
Let's all get out of here, everybody.
let's
Like
get the heck out of
Spaceballs.
here. Yeah. Or the end of Army of Darkness. Let's get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
true. I mean, the whole planet's blowing up, and it's like everybody's like, wonder what that is.
stay at your post. No, I don't think so. I'm gonna get
Nope.
over with Colonel Sanders in dark helmet here, and we're gonna get out of here.
Come back here, you fat bearded. Leave.
So she does catch herself after she delivers the finishing blow. She calms herself down, and then they're separated by the convenient ravine.
Yeah. Well, that was very,
yeah.
very symbolic, you know.
But she catches herself before that briefly, and so she pauses. She just stops. She stops, and so like that, I think that means something. And but again, to your point, Aaron, like she's always been wrestling with it, because in the third movie, she delivers the finishing blow, and then ultimately she heals him, a minute later. But it's like she gives in to that feeling of, I got to cut this guy down.
Hmm.
So she's always kind of flirted and danced with that line.
There's a big explosion of Starkiller Base.
Which becomes a sun. So no harm, no foul. The sun is back.
And it's always just the Millennium Falcon and 3 starfighters. I know, there's a few more.
All right. So the next bit of controversy is when we get back here, and of course, people freaked out that
Leia doesn't hug Chewie.
Leia doesn't hug Chewie, but Chewie is such a dutiful person. His focus is on Finn right now. Now here's where I was still I'd love to sit down in a room somewhere because with J.J. Abrams, because when Rey and Leia hug right here, it's Han and Leia's theme from Bespin. Now I get it. They're, but they haven't met yet. You know what I mean? They have not met yet. And so for them to be bonding over Han, because they, that's the only reason why I can see you would have Han and Leia's theme right there, is you have some sort of Han Solo reference. But to me, it seemed like a musical cue that, and Chewie here mourning is like, ugh, I still can't watch it.
So I think some of that's just getting carried away with Carrie Fisher and like how wonderful she is as a person, because it's like, okay, she's such a like mentor figure for all of these people, and everybody just adored her so much.
But why not have Leia's theme? Why Han and Leia's theme? That's my point. That's my point. From an operatic standpoint, there's you're using a certain musical cue. So either they, the only thing I can really stretch my brain to the fact is that the thing that they had in common was Han. But to me, I thought at the time there was a deeper story meaning that was being conveyed there. Otherwise,
I thought that as well. I mean, like, again, if we were laying bets, I would have bet money that she was Han and Leia's kid. But again, it's the way that the story is now. So let's evaluate it based on where we are and what we got. It lays a little bit of groundwork for their relationship later on, which becomes a lot more meaningful in Rise of Skywalker, as it turns out.
Right.
So they're kind of, laying the groundwork here with that.
So as we're about ready to make our way to Act 2, I've got to tell you, today I was on a video call with my manager she lives in Ireland, in Kerry. She's on vacation, but she doesn't know how to do vacation right, because we got on this call anyway. And she was on her phone and she said, "Hey, can you see him?" Over my shoulder. And over her shoulder were the Skellig Islands. You could see Skellig, you could see Octo over her shoulder. She was on another island, vacationing. And I was like, oh man.
that whole sequence, that's incredible, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can probably start talking about that now because it's going to show up here in about a minute. Um, Jedi Steps as a piece of music,
Perfect.
I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great piece of music.
Yeah.
You know, there's little hints of at first when I first heard it in the theater, I thought it was a play on Yoda's theme, and
Mhm.
it actually, you know, you could still take a little bit of that. It would make sense. It's the Jedi steps, right? Um, I, you know, I love the way this movie ended. I just set him up for problems, you know, or at least, you know,
Well,
because I
it
mean,
set him up.
yeah, they could have we've talked about Last Jedi before. They could have handled the start of that a little bit differently. But this whole sequence of finding Luke, yeah, it's incredible. The music builds just as the journey up the steps build.
It's a great cliffhanger moment.
And
Um,
I'm sorry, it was Ryan Johnson that said, "Hey, can you have R2 on the ship?" Because it was supposed to be BB-8 actually at the end of this. It's supposed to be Chewbacca, BB-8, and Rey, but Ryan Johnson needed R2. So hey, can you put R2 on there? So
yep, that was a fun little nugget. But you know, it's interesting because we always go back to Last Jedi with this movie, and like I think part of it is that these two movies, in a lot of ways, they connect a lot better than most any other Star Wars movies do. And I think
Mhm.
part of that is because of the narrative. Like that movie comes just like a few hours after this movie, basically.
Right.
Um, and so like just narratively you could watch them back to back and get a lot of enjoyment out of it in that way. Maybe in the only other two films I could think that you could do that with would be A New Hope and Rogue One. um, but like they're different in that way from any of the other like main saga films. And so
Mhm.
I do appreciate that. um, it's like, oh, cool. Because, like, how else are you going to pay off this moment?
Right.
You're not going to show this moment off screen. You have to pay it off. We have to know what comes next. So they, you know, again, JJ set it up brilliantly. The next movie, um, but the next movie pretty much had to come like right after this.
Because I mean, like kind of like what we've been saying, the whole crux of this movie has been a quest for Luke.
yeah,
Luke has been the MacGuffin. Luke has been the thing everyone's been after. So here you finally get him. You finally see him. So
but
just even the fact that it leaves it at this point with his look at her, the lightsaber, it leaves everything kind of in the open as to what could be possibly coming next. But you're right. We needed to get a resolution to this
so
moment.
we get in the DeLorean, and here's how you fix everything. You get in the DeLorean, you go back, and you say, "All right, Ryan
Don't check it over the
Johnson, you
center.
can show this, but here's what you need to do. You need to start your movie like 3 years down the road, and then you pay this off in a flashback."
I'm
There's
trying to think. Yeah.
there's a way that you can write in and say, you know, maybe Rey's training herself or something, trying to figure out, you know, this, that, and it's like, well, why didn't Luke continue your training? You know, and
I
you,
think if you pretend that Rise of Skywalker never happened, these two movies work
Hmm.
brilliantly together.
Now my question is this:
I think you're right. Yeah.
have we ever had flashbacks in Star Wars?
Well, you know, I mean, well, we had a force back here in this movie, so
Right, right. But I mean, prior to this movie,
I don't
none.
necessarily think so. That doesn't mean you
Okay.
can't, you know.
Right, right, right,
No, I mean, this movie did exactly what it was supposed to do.
right.
Mhm.
This movie was nothing more than to get people back into Star Wars.
And it did that.
It was to win back fans. It was to set up Disney for, you know, all the things that they wanted to do, and to give them. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy called this, you know, a tent pole, you know, project. That I mean,
Hmm.
that tent pole is not a tent for 3 new Star Wars movies. It was to
The franchise.
what Disney wanted to do with Star Wars. You know, whether that's theme park, whether that's movies, whether that's TV stuff, it was to get people excited about Star Wars again. And it's a fun movie. It's one of those that if it's on TNT, yeah, I'm gonna watch it. You know, it is. It's just fun. Yeah, there obviously we had our criticisms throughout the whole thing. There's, you know, you can pick it apart for being derivative, for, you know, being a little bit too on the nose at times. But, you know, sometimes you just want fun, you know.
Right.
I think there's a lot of potential for this movie to not go well.
Yeah.
And I think people lose sight of that. Like, a lot of people want to nitpick it and, you know, this or that. Or I have problems with, like you said, how derivative it is and this. But, you know, I'm so thankful for what we did get here. Because as we have seen, I think, like, you can kind of go off the rails a little bit. It doesn't take much. They really they set out to do some really what seems like simple tasks, right? We're going to bring back the big three, but we're not going to let them take over the movie. We're going to introduce these new characters, so you care about the new characters, so that we can have new movies with the new characters. And they basically did all of that, and they did it all with. There's no absence of theme. There's no absence of drama. It's entertaining, like you said. There's a lot of great action and comedy and acting. It's a really, really good movie.
Right. As the opening salvo of the Disney era Star Wars, I don't think they could have done better.
Now, I remember the last thing I'll leave you with. I remember went to church. It was the Sunday after they announced the title, Force Awakens, and a guy came up to me who, you know, knows I'm a big Star Wars fan. He said, "So what do you think of the new title, Force Awakens?" I said, "You know what? They could have called it Star Wars Episode 7, a big pile of dog crap, and I would have been excited." You know, the fact is like I would not have guessed that sitting here at 48 years old that I would still be able to see new Star Wars stuff in a theater or on TV and everything. So I am stoked every time that there is, you know, new Star Wars. And again, you know, I just try to take it for like the fact is I go into a theater going, I get to watch Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then you can like say, yeah, that wasn't the best Star Wars, but it's like pizza. It's still you know, still yummy. You know, and if I wanted something a little bit more, you know, a little bit more substance, then I'd go watch, you know, some, you know, art film or something, you know, but it's Star Wars. It's pizza. So anyway, anything else for the good of the order before we sign off? Thanks for hanging with us and watching The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. The last one should have been from his nap. And I think that's why the Simpsons used that in their little Star Wars thing on Disney Plus. Because wasn't the Force Awakens from their nap? Wasn't that what it was?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Anyway. Cool. Well, all right. Well, with that, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
And everybody have a great week, and we'll see you on the flip side.
McConkey.